Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at Talking Business. I love that intro. It's new. I'm so excited, even though I didn't hit it fast enough. But work with me. I'll get there. I'll get there. So, as many of you know or may not know, it is National Women's Small Business Month. And so we are really chomping at the bit this month to talk to women entrepreneurs, as is my guest we will be showing in a moment. Her name is Christen Dior of Dior Cupcakes. And this, again, is one of those industries that's always intrigued me. And she's going to give us the inside scoop on how it all works. So welcome, Christen.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you for agreeing to do this.
No problem. I'm excited.
I told her I love that backdrop. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So we'll start with, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my actual name is Christen Hill. The Dior came in college because my name was, everybody kept calling me Christian, but it's Christen. And then they're like Christian Dior. And then it just kind of stuck. And so when I was coming up with a business name, I'm like, I have to find something that nobody else has. So it was like 1 million Chrissy's Cupcakes. It's 1 million everything. And I'm like, okay, what is not out there? And Dior's Cupcakes is the only thing that wasn't out there already. So kind of go by Christen Dior. I am originally from Kansas City, Kansas, born and raised. I moved to Florida for college in 2008. Okay. I have a master's degree in business management and I have a bachelor's degree in communications. And I learned how to bake from my mother. And I actually currently work in corporate America. I do money laundering investigations by day, and I am a baker by night.
Wow, that's actually way cool. I'm sorry, that's a whole nother show. We're gonna have to find out about the money. That's a whole nother show. You must come back and talk about that. So you mentioned, actually, you unpacked some stuff there that I had not thought about. You are an employed by day and an entrepreneur by night. Tell us a little bit about the challenges there must be of having, essentially working, 60-hour day, 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week?
I get pretty busy. I do work 40 hours a week at my regular job, sometimes on the weekends, depends on the need and work base. But my job is pretty flexible since we've been working from home. It kind of works in my favor now that I can work from home because I can kind of multitask and get everything, try to get everything done in a timely manner as far as on my personal side and making sure that I get all of my work done. But it is very, like when we were in the office, it was very challenging because I have to make sure that I'm coming in early so that I can leave early, but I'm going to sleep late. So I'm not going to sleep until 3 a.m, but then I'll have to be at work at like 7 or 8 o'clock. So that kind of was the challenging part. So now that I've been at home, COVID kind of has worked in my favor in that area. But yeah, it's a little bit, like I mentioned to you before we started, I was selling cupcakes on the weekends from 12 to 12 because I'm off on the weekends. So it works better for me to go and kind of promote my business and things like that on the weekends. So my weekends were really filled with cupcakes and cakes every single weekend for months. Actually, almost a whole year. That's what I did for almost a whole year.
I was going to ask you how long you've been doing that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for that part, yeah. I haven't done it in a while since the cakes picked up, but the selling at the market really helped increase my business tremendously. I'm not from Miami. I don't have any family here. Don't really know anybody here. So it was just kind of like, if I want to start a business, how do I get people to know about my business? And I'm on a budget. I don't have a huge budget for marketing. So how can I get people to know about me? So I'm like, okay, let's get creative. Look, you didn't spend all this money on a degree or a couple of degrees to, not use them. So I was like, okay, let's get down to the marketing. And I was like, I can go to this market. For me, I can go there. I'm going to spend $100 for the day to be there. But for me, if I gave out all of my business cards and I would go with like 500 business cards, then it was a win for me because you might not get anything from me now, but you might see my card later and say, oh, you know what? I was looking for somebody to bake something for me. And here's this girl, So it really increased it increased my business a lot being there. And
no, I was going to ask, were you able to determine that literally some people from that activity?
A whole lot of people. Actually, that's how everything kind of just blew up. It's like maybe a couple of people remember me, and then they told somebody, and then they told somebody, and like word of mouth was like a big help, like a tremendous help. Yeah.
Good. By the way, Patricia Hall Clark, thanks for coming. Proud mother mom moment, she said. And good, I'm glad you're listening because we're about to talk about you for a second here. You mentioned that your mom actually was an entrepreneur as well, if I recall, Patty Cake Home Baked Goods out of Kansas City, Kansas. So as we talked about prior to the show, she taught you your skills in terms of cooking and baking. What were the lessons you learned from her about entrepreneurship?
So my mom originally was a housewife. And when her and my dad split up, being a housewife, you don't have a lot of skills. But one of the skill sets she had, which she learned from my great grandma, is baking and cooking. So she knew how to cook really well. So on Saturdays, she would sell dinners to, there are a lot of different factories in Kansas, like Colgate, Sunshine Biscuits, which they make a lot of the like vanilla wafers and cookies and things like that. So she would sell dinners to the people who worked at, General Motors and all of these places because they have lunch. It's only like 30 minutes. And there's really nowhere to go when you're kind of in a like factory setting. So she would go take orders and we would go and deliver them on Saturdays. And I'm like in elementary school, like literally kindergarten, first grade. And I'm riding along with her while she's, delivering these dinners. And I always wanted to help. I want to do something. I want to help. Can I wash dishes? If I would have known what washing dishes was. Yeah. Like now I'm tired of washing dishes, but she got me a little stool and she's like, okay, you can help wash dishes. And she would watch this or mix this up or cut this up or do this. So to me, it was fun. It's like helping. It's not like work because I feel like I'm being a big person. Like this is fun for me. And so she kind of showing me, watch this. If you put this in the oven, and by all means, I am not a culinary expert. I'm not at all. So my baking method is completely like I know the cake is done if it bounces in the middle, because that's what, when I was little, that's what, the cake is done when you press the middle and it bounces back up, that means it's done. But in culinary school, obviously that's not the proper way, but that's what she told me. Right. So it's kind of like she taught me all the things that she was taught, although they're not the proper way, obviously, but it works and it gets the job done. And I absolutely appreciate her for that. But for years, that's what she did. She sold bundt cakes and sweet potato pies and peach cobblers and all those sorts of things. And she would help me okay, when you make the crust, this is what you do. And when you do this, and as I got older, I was kind of like, I'm kind of tired of doing this. I'm tired of. And then when I thought about it, I'm like, I really, if there were anything that I could do that I would enjoy doing, it would be baking, because I really had fun doing that as a kid with her, because that was our bonding time. Other families kind of have, sitting by the TV or this. Right. Ours was cooking and baking in the kitchen. Literally, my mom's kitchen has a whole setup, kind of like a living room, like TV, everything, because when people come over, everybody goes to the kitchen. Nobody sits in the living room. Yeah, nobody sits in the living room. Everybody's in the kitchen. That's just, they play cards in the kitchen. They watch TV in the kitchen. The kitchen is where I did my homework, in the kitchen. So that's just where we are, Is
that your house now? Is the same thing? You kind of congregate to the kitchen?
I actually ended up putting the TV in my kitchen.
Okay. Yeah. It came from home. Is she your biggest advisor now when you find you have some challenges? Do you, Mom, what did you do?
Baking side, yes. Okay. When I first got started, she flew down here actually and stayed with me for a week, because I was like, well, I really want to start this business. And then I'm like, I took some cupcakes to work for them to try. And I'm like, something's wrong. I'm not making it right. Something's wrong. So she ended up coming down here and she's like, well, make all the stuff that you wanted to sell. So I made everything. And she's like, yeah, you need to change this. You need to do this. You need to do this. And then I'm like, well, what's the recipe for the red velvet cake? She like, I'm like, you can give it to me. Yeah, she was trying to give it up. I'm like, you can give it to me. She was like, if I give you this recipe,
family.
yeah, she's like, if I give you this recipe, you cannot give it to nobody. I mean, you cannot. It took me a long time to come up with this recipe. Don't give it out. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna give it out.
So in other words, I can't ask for that, right?
No, not that one, not that one. She would kill me.
What I will ask though is, trademarking recipes. I know that's a very intellectual property. It's been very interesting. Dynamic lately. I actually had an attorney on this show that talked a lot about intellectual property and what you should do. Have you had to trademark some of your recipes at this point, or?
No, I haven't. The only one I probably would be the red velvet, but I haven't. Yeah.
The goal ultimately, as you grow, you will look into doing something like that. And have you even done the research as to what that takes?
Yeah, I started doing the research, and it is a pretty extensive process because it's certain things that, you can't trademark within, like if I wanted to trademark the red velvet cake, like it would have to be so distinct to me that would be the only way. Like, so there can't be any other recipe exactly like mine.
Okay.
No,
really?
Yeah, it can't
be.
Will
they research that? I mean,
yeah, they do.
Wow.
Because once I started researching, a lot of people got either it's pending or they declined it because it's a part of something else that someone else has.
Wow. Look, your mama saying, okay, now, all right, I promise I won't try to get the recipe. I'll buy some cake from her. I wouldn't make it right anyway. So, wow, that's interesting. So, in the 2000s, I actually did a little research, and it said that kind of the cupcake craze kind of came about as a result of an episode of Sex and the City around the 2000s. I was never a really big Sex and the City watcher, but I do remember when all of a sudden people were making business off of cupcakes, which I thought was so amazing. Like, it became a multi-million-dollar, and it still is a
It's actually a billion-dollar industry. Yeah, it's a billion-dollar industry, and it's
and there are people that have shops that just sell cupcakes, and mini cupcakes, little cupcakes, all these different flavors. So, has the industry? There are challenges, I'm sure, in the industry. That has it had ebbs and flows? Is it still sort of a staple in our market?
Changed a lot. When I first started, I said, all I want to do is sell cupcakes. I don't want to make cakes. I just want to do cupcakes only. And a bunch of people, you should make cakes. You should make cakes. And I'm like, no, strictly cupcakes. That's all I'm going to do is cupcakes. And it's like, I kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. And so now I do a lot of cakes. I do cupcakes as well. And it's a mix of the two. But the cake thing, these elaborate, lifelike cakes are like the new banging thing. Can I get my face on it? Can I get this? Everything that is realistic that someone likes, can I get that on a cake? They want any and everything on a cake. They want money. They want, name it. I probably done had somebody ask me to put it on a cake. And I'm like, you want that on a cake? Yeah, I want it on a cake. Or they want a cake made into something. I want a cake in the shape of a car. I want a cake in the shape of this. So that really is a big amount. Yeah, they want cakes in the shape of any and everything.
Have you had to hone that skill yourself, or did you?
Yes, I am working on it. Yes, I'm working on it diligently because a lot of people are into that type of thing. I'm getting better at it. Like I said, I'm self-taught, so I really am a visual learner, so I can watch a YouTube video and kind of recreate it. So that's kind of my method of learning how to do things. Going to look and learn.
Started that.
Yeah, look and learn type thing. So I'm really good at that. So yeah, it has changed. It's changed a lot, a whole lot. But it's still kind of a booming thing because people love sweets.
Right. So, of course. Yeah. But then how does that help? Make you structure your pricing, or do you feel like you are able to structure your pricing appropriately? If you're sculpting a cake, that's a little bit different from slapping.
Well, I would say this, my greatest business downfall for myself would be pricing myself too low when I first started, because I didn't know anyone and I didn't have customers. I really wanted to get customers. So a lot of times I did things for the price of what the ingredients cost me, and I didn't pay myself, which is a huge no in business. And I know I didn't pay myself. And as I slowly went up, I noticed I did lose customers that I had in the beginning. And I understand, which is understandable with business. Everybody's not going to grow with you and grow with your business. And now I'm finally getting to the point where I am starting to charge people for my time and my craft. But that was a huge challenge for me, having the confidence in myself enough to say, you know what? I can charge somebody $200 for this cake and I don't feel bad about it. Like, I literally would feel bad about telling somebody, oh, this cake is going to be $300. But in actuality, I'm spending 6 hours in the kitchen making this cake. It may only take me 45 minutes to bake it, but then it's going to take me 5 hours and 15 minutes to decorate it.
Because of all the pieces and the parts.
Yeah, because and people don't understand all the little intricate pieces that you have to cut and mold and put. It's a lot of work. And then when I tell them the price, oh, well, you're crazy. It's just for cake. Yeah, it's just for cake. But then you want a whole something. Like this weekend, I made a cake that was a cigar box. I had to make each individual cigar. And then I had to make each label to go on the cigars. So that takes time. It literally took me like 3.5 hours to make the cake.
Plus your planning time. You got to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. Because that's the first time I've ever made it. So I'm like, okay, let me research to see, because there are a lot of different little parts, and I don't think people understand that aspect of it. But the pricing, I'm just now getting to the point where I'm comfortable with charging what I need to charge to see a significant profit and to pay myself and to put back into my business. So
with that in mind, you had to sort of come up with a break-even price based on what types of expenses.
Yeah. So ingredients, that's my biggest thing. As far as finding things that are cost efficient and still pleasing to my customers is a pretty big challenge for me, because sometimes I want to switch to something that's a little cheaper, but in actuality, I can't. And I was telling my mom just recently, I have someone that buys cakes and cupcakes from me on a regular basis. So I ended up giving them a dozen cupcakes just because I had them left over. And I ended up finding a flavor at Restaurant Depot, and it was a vanilla flavor. It's not the flavor that I normally use. The flavor that I normally use has a distinct taste. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe nobody will notice that I'm switching to this new flavor. And I gave them, and they immediately noticed that it wasn't the same. It doesn't taste the same. There's something wrong with it. It's not the same.
Oh, my.
Yeah. They're like, what is this? This isn't the same thing. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I didn't do anything different. No, you did something different. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, you did something different. It's not the same. And I'm like, I changed the flavor. He's like, yeah, this not it. You got to go back. Go back.
And look, and if that's a customer that's a consistent, you go back.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I got to go back. I was going to try to change, but I can't do it. I got to go back.
Right. Do you have staff, or are you kind of a one-man band?
I recently got me an assistant. She's been helping me kind of with my calendar, because I want to keep it to where when people order that I can respond to them within 24 to 48 hours. I don't like people to wait for invoicing and wait for me to give them a response. And with me working during the day and full time, people are, calling and stuff like that. So I want to be able to make them feel like, I'm not one of those businesses that, people, Black businesses, they never respond. They never do, that stigma. So she's been kind of helping me, fill in my schedule, help me make party treats, because I actually stopped doing them for a while because it's just a little too much for one person to be able to make cakes and cupcakes and party treats and candy apples, and it's a lot. So I tried to find me someone that can kind of help me with that I can also kind of mold, because she's young and she's interested in learning about baking and things like that. So it's also kind of a mentoring, and she's kind of assisting me in the same sense. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about before the show, and you just tapped on events have been your channel of distribution to make money. Of course, during the pandemic, that shut down. So what did you have to do during that period of time that those events were starting to trying to close, especially over the summer? That's wedding time. And what thoughts did you have around new revenue streams provided?
So right before the pandemic, I actually was in the process of looking to opening me an event space. Because I wanted to be kind of a one-stop shop where you can have your event, get your cake, get your treats, and all of these things all in one venue. Gotcha. And I bought a photo booth because I wanted to do photo booth rentals inside of that. And then the pandemic happened, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just spent all this money, and now people aren't having events. Like, what? Oh my God. Like, I'm like, people aren't having events. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe let's kind of play it by ear because it's March. I'm like, let's play it by ear to see, because April is normally pretty busy for me. That's the kind of the start of the busiest for like weddings and stuff. It starts in April. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe people are still going to have their party. So I'm still kind of reaching out to people, asking, are you going to still? And then like one by one, everybody just, we're going to reschedule. We're going to reschedule. We're going to reschedule. And I'm like, no.
I need the money. You got to get married anyway.
And I'm like, no. And then so a few people did reschedule, and I didn't have to give them, refunds or anything. And they rescheduled for a later date. But it was a big significant hit because I ended up refunding thousands of dollars of, already put in deposits for, and people already paid for their cakes, because if you're having a first birthday party, you only turn one once. So there's kind of no rescheduling. Yeah, there's kind of no rescheduling of first birthday party. Exactly. So I'm like, okay, I understand it's, and I'm not one of those people. I understand people, they need their money as well as me. So, we kind of came to an agreement, less the deposit or whatever I already spent, I will refund to you. I know business is business, but I'm also a person, and I know how it feels when, and then when all of that stuff hit, a lot of people lost jobs. They weren't working. So I'm like, I know what it would feel like if I just paid somebody $200 and now it's just gone and I don't have a job. So,
and they'll come back to you because they understand that you were human. You had that heart connection.
Because at the end of the day, yes, I do want to make money, but I don't want to lose sight of, people. I'm a human being. They're human. Stuff happens. So I'm kind of, I can see both sides because I've been there. But it's pretty challenging with that. And as far as getting supplies, a lot of things shut down. Me finding cake boxes, I was like in a panic for basically a whole 2 months because I'm like, oh my God, I can't find cake boxes because they're all sold out because they're not producing because people aren't working. Right. And I'm like, oh goodness, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to use in the meantime? So that really has me thinking now, because since, this isn't over, something happened and everything will shut back down again. So now I'm kind of in a spot where if I see, if I can order extra cake boxes now, I'm ordering them. Although I may not need them right now, I'm having it because that's a big lesson that it taught me is, I always have enough inventory. I always have enough supplies.
Right.
If it's not perishable, if it's not perishable, have it on hand because like now the flavoring that I use for my icing, it's nowhere to be found. I can't find it anywhere.
See,
the supplier, I cannot, and when I tell you I cannot find it, I even had my mom looking in Kansas. When I went to Kansas, I found like 3 bottles and another type that I can use. And I really put them all in my suitcase and brought them back on the plane because I can't find the flavor. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like I looked online, can't find it.
Right.
And I'm like, this, and it's like, I'm like, do they not make it anymore? And they're like, they're just not producing right now.
Right.
And I'm like, this is crazy.
The food industry was one of those industries that seemed to have survived this whole pandemic thing, but seems to have shifted. The ingredient, I mean, food seems to be more expensive. There are some things you can't find. So I can imagine in a business that relies on food and ingredients to be a part of the products they develop, how have you been able to adapt and just adjust and still satisfy your customers? And has that been more expensive for you?
So I am a couponer. Look, I like to I am a couponer.
With the coupons.
Yes, I'm a couponer and I am a bargain shopper. So I would roughly say in about 3 weeks time span, I go through about 13 dozen eggs.
Okay.
So in about 3 weeks, I use about 13 dozen eggs. And there was a point where they were putting limits on how many eggs you can buy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And the cheapest way for me to purchase eggs would be to go to Aldi's because they were selling eggs for 28 cents a dozen or 49 cents a dozen. And I'm like, okay, great. 28 cents a dozen. I'm saving tons of money by doing that. But then they put a limit on the eggs. And I'm like, oh, shoot. Now, like, what do I do? And there's one Aldi's I go to in particular, and they know me. So she kind of let me slide on the limit. But it was kind of like only when that person was there, I would be able to kind of slide on the limit. So then I would go. The only other alternative is Restaurant Depot. I go there a whole lot. And I spent 75 cents more, but I didn't have to play that kind of weight game to see if that person was there. And powdered sugar as well. It's only a certain brand that I use. I don't like the other brands because they're too sweet. I don't like the way they taste. And then they put a limit. Oh, you can only buy 2. And I'm like, 2?
Do you know how many cakes I gotta make?
I'm like, 2 bags of powdered sugar is only that won't even finish 1 cake. I'm like, how many times I got to go back in come back in here, go back through the line. And so I ended up getting a connection with a manager at Walmart, and he ended up, if I let him know that I need extra, he would put in extra for his order and then let me know when it comes in, and then I could go there and pick it up.
Very nice. Actually, very nice. That you had that kind of connection and was able to.
It was just about in there talking. So I'm in there talking to the guy, and I'm like, hey, so guess what? I bake cakes, and he was like, I'm like, is it something that could be done? And he was like, oh yeah, for sure. We can just put in an extra order for you, and then I'll call you and let you know when it's in, and then you can come pick it up. And I'm like, great. So it really helps me out a lot.
Have you thought about putting your products in stores?
I have thought about it, but I am, I don't want to say procrastinator, but I'm kind of nervous that if I start doing that and then it gets really, really big, am I going to be able to, like, that's my thing. I'm like, okay, well, what if it gets too big? Then what am I going to do? And then I'm like, okay, am I ready to quit my day job and like do this? Because if it gets that big, I have to quit my day job. And I'm like, that's kind of like my security net. And I'm like, okay, am I ready to make this leap and jump? And it's just kind of crazy because everything keeps happening to kind of force me to kind of make this leap and jump. So I'm thinking about it. I
actually know someone that I could maybe connect you with if you've got some questions about going into stores, because I know it can be an overwhelming decision.
Yeah, and then that's what I'm thinking. Like, oh my God, like if that happens, then I'm like, I'll be busy 24/7. Like,
I'm sorry, but the money laundering job might have to go away, which I think is so cool. I hate to say it, but I think it's really cool. So as a result of the pandemic, were you able to benefit from the CARES Act?
I did get, partially. I'm really, I don't like loans.
Oh yeah.
I don't. I did get yes, I am self-funded. Okay. I don't like loans. If I could go around and make things work without having to do loans, although, it's good for building credit and things like that. I just, I'm always skeptical. Okay, you saying you're giving me this much money and then I don't have to pay it back if I do this? Are you sure? Like, I'm that person. Are you sure that I don't? Are you sure?
I don't have the money to give you back to you.
Yeah. Are you sure? Because, and then that's my thing. Cause I'm like, okay, so if I take this money and then I'm not able to pay it back, or this doesn't happen, or the pandemic lasts longer. And so that kind of, yeah, I could get the money, but the other part of me is like, I don't want to be stuck paying for something and the terms change or something happens and I can't pay it back. Then I'm stuck. So I don't take, if I don't necessarily need it, I don't take it. That's mine. Yeah.
Gotcha. So how have you had to pivot both operationally? We talked a little bit about some of your products have had, or your ingredients have had to pivot. How just operationally, how are you doing things a lot differently now that the pandemic sort of shined a little light on that I need to do this?
Being consistent with my customers is really a big thing, and making sure they're consistent with this pandemic. Like, I have strict rules about, picking up, about pickup times, and making sure people follow those, because you don't know who's been in contact with who, and you don't know. And that was one of the biggest things I had about hiring someone, because at the end of the day, I'm handling someone's food. Right. I know where I've been. I know who I've been in contact with, but I don't know who this person has been in contact with. And I don't want them handling someone else's food. Gotcha. And I'm giving it to them, and now I'm responsible. And then that's the same for picking up. I want people to know, when you pick up, I need to know it's you that's picking up, and I'm not giving it to someone else, because I don't want anything to happen in the midst of you getting your item and it's been in contact with somebody that has COVID. Then I'm responsible. Right. So yeah, that's really like a big thing. So I've been doing a lot of deliveries lately so that I know for sure, who's getting it. Yeah. And that I'm making sure it's where it's supposed to be. Now, anything happens after that, not my problem. That's on you. But yeah, that making sure that, because I want people to feel safe. I don't want them to order it, because that's the last thing I need. Oh, I got a cake from Dior's and now I have COVID. Like,
right. That is not going to be a good advertising.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you market now? Before you talked about the market in Wynwood. How do you market now? What is your strongest way of getting out into the world, what you do?
Instagram is the best tool out there for anybody that's on a budget that wants to market. I actually, last year, I went to this class about promoting your business on Instagram, and it was like $200. And I'm like, oh, well, either it's going to be a waste of $200 or I'm going to take something from it. And I actually learned a lot. For that $200 was well worth it. The things that the person told me in the class about, start off with a small budget for marketing, see how that works, figure out your target market, because Instagram does all of this for you. They track how many people look at your post, what type of people look at your post, what age, what race, where do they live, what things do they primarily search for when they're on Instagram. They track your patterns. So that information that they gather, if I'm running a $5 ad, they're giving me all this information for $5. And I don't have to pay anybody else to do it, because they have it right there. Right. I check my insights and I say, you know what? Well, this post didn't do really well because these type of people only like to look at pictures without words. Right. So take the words out of the picture. Or these type of people only want to look at videos that are really short. Right. So if my video is too long, then I lose my audience. They're not watching after the first 10 seconds. Right. So I'm like, so it really, Instagram is kind of like my biggest contributor. Like I use it nonstop. Like I love it.
And I would imagine with cakes, since it's that medium that likes video and photography, your pictures of your cakes are probably amazing and definitely will make people stop. Gotta check
Well,
out.
actually, I've been getting better at that. I mean, I call it my little photo studio. I have like a piece of fabric that I have on the wall and all these lights, and then I sit the cake in the middle. And there's some, I'm not old, but they're younger than me and they're more savvy with the apps and the different things. And they told me, like, you can use this app and you put your cake on there and then it'll change the background for you. And then,
green screen.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, really? So now I'm like, oh, my pictures are like up another notch because now, oh my God, like, I'm like, where's this app been all of my life? Because I didn't need all these backdrops and all this other stuff. I just really needed this app.
They actually, a friend of mine just tuned in. She said she checked out your website and your cakes are beautiful. And then Beauty said, beautiful, they taste great. I have had a very hard time finding a baker like Christen in Tampa. God bless her business for continued success and growth even during this pandemic. So looks like you've got a market in Tampa if you can get some cakes and pops and pies.
I live in Tampa. And so when I first started, since I knew more people in Tampa than I did here, I'm like, well, how can I get more, people talking about it online? So I would go up there on some weekends and take all of my friends' cakes and stuff. So then they'll repost it and talk about it. And
Very
I'm like, I need word of mouth,
Yeah, definitely you need to stay in that market because it looks like you're missed. So what are your future plans? Where do you go from here? Where do you, I know you said you're kind of struggling with, are you ready to make that boom or are you comfortable where you are today? What are your thoughts about that?
I would like to expand. I don't know if I'm like brick and mortar ready because it's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. But I think the stepping stone to that, I really want a food truck that is like all around, kind of not really in the same spot every day, kind of taking the sweets to other people, taking them around so people can try. Like I have this idea to make it like this fun kind of carnival themed cupcake food truck where you can do a funnel cake food truck, funnel cake cupcake, a chocolate covered Oreo cupcake. Like to me, that's my ideal thing. Like I would love to do that because it's fun. I haven't seen it. And
That's true.
I think it would be great. Like, so that
you can go to events. That'd be a great thing for events. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you
I would love to do that.
How many SKUs? Do you have a lot of SKUs now? And have you had to reduce those SKUs during the pandemic?
A look, not so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So it's based on what the person likes.
Yes. Okay. So it's kind of like the popular thing now is money on cakes. I don't know why. But money on cakes is the big thing now. So
now I know what to put on my red velvet cake that I order.
Yeah. So if you want edible $100 bills, that's the thing now on cakes. Why I have no idea the fascination with edible money, but it's a new craze now.
That's
so funny. I'm serious. They just want a regular cake and just put some $100 bills on it, and I'm like, okay.
Okay, I'll take that.
No, it's fine.
You paying me for it? I got it.
Yeah, I think I probably go through about 50 edible image sheets a week because the money is kind of a big thing now. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's because of a lack of nobody has any money.
And that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, well, if I wanted a cake, would I want the cake with the money, or you could just give me the money? I think I just want the money.
Yeah. Exactly.
Give me the money.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much. I want to make sure I didn't miss any questions at all. Like I said, I've absolutely always been intrigued by the cupcake business, and I thank you for coming on and sharing your sort of inside secrets, but not inside secrets with us. Do you feel like I know we talked a little bit beforehand, your business did stop for a while, but you feel like it's starting to increase again? Was there a huge drop in your business in terms of your
it was a huge drop, and then it was a huge influx. So
cool.
so for April and May, In a little bit of June, it was very slow. It wasn't, and I actually, some of the shops that were still out here open that was supposed to be open,
Right.
I would go there on the weekends with my cupcakes because they had people in there, and I'm like, hey, you want to buy cupcakes? And I'm like going back to basics. So I'm selling $2 and $1 cupcakes and selling $15 bundt cakes online and things like that. And then all of a sudden July hit, and I think it might have been when we were like phase 2. July hit, and then all of a sudden, boom, everybody wants a cake. And I'm like,
so you went back to 100% almost where you dropped off.
Yeah, I mean,
that's good.
I was like, wow, like, is this many people having parties? And I'm like, wait, the venues aren't open, but that it correlates with the influx of people using Airbnbs. So they don't have event spaces open, but I can still rent an Airbnb and have a party. So it was like every weekend I'm taking cakes to different Airbnbs because people are having parties there.
Okay,
so
very cool. So I shared it to make sure. Patricia Hill Clark, Mackenzie Simmons. Okay, I guess we're talking about. I was just kind of reading some of the messages.
Okay.
Well, before we leave, we would like for you to tell us how we can get in touch with you.
If you would like to place an order or you're just interested in looking at my work, you can visit me at www.diorscupcakes.com. And that's DIORS Cupcakes. You can also find me on Instagram at Dior's Cupcakes, Facebook at Dior's Cupcakes, and you can Google me. Just type in Dior's Cupcakes and we pop up. You can also reach me by phone. My number is 786-540-3467. And the last 4 digits spell out Dior, by the way.
Okay, cool.
So if you forget.
Dior, just think Dior.
Yeah.
And that's a cool name, by the way. My husband was like, wow, wonder if there's any relation. I was like, no, I don't think they're related.
No. But it was unique enough that nobody else has the name. So if you see it, there's only one me. So there's only one as of right now, there's only one Dior's Cupcakes. So.
Well, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye, Mom. I hope you'll tune in again, and maybe we get
happy 21st birthday to my niece. She's on the live, Mackenzie. That's Mackenzie Simon. She turned 21 today. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. And thank you for joining us, actually. And I hope everyone who I see is here from Kansas City, please join us again. We would love to be able to share with you more information from other entrepreneurs. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Wow, we had a great audience today, and I thank you so much. And that's definitely, I'm sure, family and friends of Christen. So we really appreciate you tuning in and hope you will again. Our next show is Thursday at 10 a.m. where we will talk to Corlette DeVoe. She's a multi-mogul. I call her a mogul. She's got multiple businesses that you want to know more about, both in the medical industry as well as in the senior living and senior care industry. So that's going to be a wonderful, wonderful show. Thank you again for tuning in. I really encourage you to go get some cupcakes because I haven't tasted them yet, but I've heard they're delicious. From a friend who recommended I speak to Christen. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you on Thursday at 10.